Going to pick back up after the break, and I looked to see if there was.
Have the light off for a reason?
You need it on.
Yeah, she
No, I
wanted
don't
it.
need it on.
It's for her.
Oh, okay.
This
I was
is-
just curious if you're showing us a movie.
No, this it's too bright with it on.
Okay.
I can't see that the only other thing is we mentioned the drug Actos, ACTOS, and it's still on the market, isn't it? As far as y'all know, but it does stimulate beta cells and it'll burn them out. See, that's why, and even can cause bladder cancer. And it's still on the market. It hadn't obviously been enough for them to take it off the market. Actos stimulates beta cells to a point that burns them up, and then bladder cancer. You know, if it's bad enough, they take it off the market. So that hadn't been bad enough, I guess. But I don't want to take it if anybody wanted me to. All right, now I think, so we've gone over what we're treating for. We know blood sugars, fasting should be about 60 to 100. And be very mindful of blood sugars versus insulin and when they start. And that's the reason you have that card. If you ever were nursing, home nursing or anything else, you know when it begins. And I point out to students, if somebody needs to run a lab downstairs, need to go to a test, and they're on NPH and it's a 15-minute test, it doesn't mean they can't get their NPH because it isn't even going to start for an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you can be mindful that way and not get people off their regular time spans.
Can I ask you one question? The nutritionist, does she tell her diabetic patients to eat at the same time every day?
No, she doesn't. I don't think she does. And also that reminds me on intentional, intermittent fasting, they say it doesn't matter. Now that they say doesn't matter, that your 8 hours that you eat and the 8 hours you, does not matter. Just do it. But have you been told to eat?
That's what I was told.
I would think the body likes that.
Right, when you were talking about how there's like the insulin.
And it probably does best to do that. Probably any pattern that we're trying to teach it, teach the body. One other thing, and I'm smart now, but, and a lot of nurses have learned it because of my experience, but years ago, and I've told you I do that camp nursing on Lookout Mountain, and I've done it for nearly 35 years, and, but I was there by myself the first year, and it's 180 boys, and I was the only nurse. I think I told you. Then in a couple of years, he picked up another nurse, and now there are 3 of us and a doctor. But I had this diabetic child the first year I was there, and he was about 9, I think it was, and his mother brought him up to the clinic upstairs and pointed out his. I think we were doing blood sugars. That was like the first, no, I think we were doing urines then. That was urine. And then the next year, she showed me the glucometer. We'd started that. And so that tells you it's been a lot of years, maybe 30 years or so. And so she would always leave snacks for diabetic snacks. And you know, y'all, they say don't waste your money on them. Just eat sugar, but watch it. Don't do all the artificial. Stevia is fine because it is a plant. But don't waste your money on diabetic type stuff. And you know what, y'all, somebody said those Cokes, it tricks your brain. Who was saying that?
The artificial sweetener.
Yeah, the artificial sweetener tricks your brain.
I heard you can gain more.
And you get fat. So anyway, she had all this dietetic stuff for him. And so the first year the second year I guess I was there, I was still by myself. It was opening day, and she brought all the stuff, and so I was set up. And the next morning, first morning of camp, he came up before morning watch, and he said, I'm sick, I've been vomiting and everything. So I said, James, I've got to do your blood sugar. Oh, you didn't want anybody there, you know, complaining, but I said, I got to do it. So I did it and was 33. Well, he's vomiting and everything else. So I said, he said, I'm just so thirsty. And I thought, well, I bet you are.
Yeah.
And so I asked what he wanted. He wanted pop, drink, Coca-Cola or whatever. I gave him Sprite because there's controversy on whether the caffeine really depletes your fluid, but why wouldn't it? I don't get the argument that that's wrong. So I gave him Sprite, sugar. And but before I did, I said, James, I'm afraid to give you, I figured he'd guzzle it. I would have. And he's vomited and he's thirsty and all those signs of hyperglycemia. I said, I'm just going to give you an ounce every 15 minutes. And that's what I did, a medicine cup, and I'd give him, he didn't love that, but he'd lay on a Chase lounge thing, and I just every 15 minutes. So you know a 10-ounce Coke took 10, 15 minutes, so 2.5 hours. And we got through, and I was very proud, and I told him, I said, James, you've held it, and that's great, and hadn't brought it up. And I said, now just lay real still here on this Chase. And I started down the hall to my quarters, and I tell people there's not many absolutes in the world, but vomitus on a hardwood floor, it's an absolute sound. There is no doubt when you hear it, it's a vomitus on a hardwood floor. And so he vomited it all up. And, you know, I'm worn out. He is too. He has some flight pain. And so by now I need some help. And now I could handle it, I think. But then I couldn't. It wasn't that I was that young, but I just hadn't dealt with on the job. Hospital, I gotcha, but not like that. So I called his mama and told her, and she said, how much insulin have you given him? I said, oh, I didn't give him any insulin. I said, Bimmy, he had a 33. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, brother, she said. I never will forget, oh, brother. Oh, my. And she said, we'll need to she wasn't upset. She said, we need to get him down to a doctor. And she didn't try to make me feel bad or anything. She was just kind of talking out loud, we need to get him there. But she wasn't alarmed. And the Fort Payne, Alabama is 17 miles away, and so I told her we'd go there. It was going to take her 2 hours, but she wanted to come up. And so, but she wasn't alarmed, and I wasn't either. Now, you hadn't asked, I didn't take another blood sugar. Who in the world wouldn't take another blood sugar? But I didn't. And now I know better because I put everything together. But got him in the car, and we start down to the emergency room, and I talked to myself. I said, give insulin. She's not a nurse. She doesn't know. And I thought, but another little voice said, she's had a diabetic son for 3 years. She does know something. So I do make the story embellished a little bit when I say that. I jumped out of the car and ran in the emergency room to see if I did right. But that isn't right. We walked in together. I didn't walk in with him. I didn't let him come. So we walked in together, and this female ER doctor was there. And we had to go because it was after hours. And I told her about it, and I said, now the mother thinks I should have given insulin. The doctor said, well, I wouldn't have. I said, okay. I thought so. And so they start working on him. I'm kind of worn out with it all. So I just sit and let them take over, and I watch, and they give him anything he wants, which is fluids, and which makes you think he's hyperglycemic. And so then he vomits, and his just the fluid. And they did his blood sugar. It was 540 because, and then it hit me. You know, it's just hard to apply what you learn in a classroom unless you're doing it. I mean, experience is wonderful. And then I remembered in school, it was graduate school actually, I didn't have it in undergraduate, the physiologist reminded us that when your muscles are begging for sugar and you're not giving it to them, then it asks, please, I've got to have something. And of course it'll try to start breaking down, but it has a good source in the liver, holds a supply. Gluconeogenesis, remember the word? You've learned the word, you've got through a test with it, but what did it really mean? And when the muscles were not getting the sugar, it kept saying, I've got to have sugar, I've got to have sugar. He tried, but he vomited it. He probably absorbed a little, but it wasn't getting there because the insulin wasn't, and he's juvenile. He's type 1. And so he's not getting any in his in his muscles, but they keep begging, and the body then goes to the source. That was his pain. Goes to the liver and starts pouring it out. So you can be MPO, you cannot take anything, and your blood sugar is going to still go high. Just the same reason of stress. You can still get a high blood sugar even though you're not eating, because it just